So in this video, we're going to be talking about your Hayward Aquarite salt system. I like the salt systems because the chlorine is a cleaner, more natural form of chlorine. It has less of an odor, less of a feel on the skin, less of the wear and tear on the plumbing parts and the bathing suits, so they're not fading out as quickly. So we're just going to go over some of the basics of understanding the system and how to use it. Now, the first thing that I want to talk about is that salt cell, which is that little white piece that you'll see down at the bottom of the left-hand side of the screen below the box. That's your salt cell. That'll be found in the plumbing somewhere after your filtration system as the water's traveling back to the pool. That needs to be cleaned once a season. So you can do it yourself at home using a bucket and a solution of 1 part of muriatic acid added to 4 parts of water. Or if you don't feel like messing with that yourself, you can have a pool professional clean it. I usually tell people that it's best to either choose your opening or your closing. Do that as part of your natural, rituals of opening or closing the pool. And it adds a small fee to our opening or closing cost if you want us to do it. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is we have a product that's called Restore, and I'm sure there's other products out there on the market like it, but that's a weekly add-on that you pour into the pool, and that is good at keeping the salt system clean and operating at peak efficiency so that you get the most out of your salt system. And then the final part is that cell itself, the way it's mounted into the plumbing, you can rotate that so that the water travels from one end to the other and then the opposite way the next year. And that's good for the salt cell because the cell, as the water travels through, the plates that are in there that generate your chlorine, the water is not going to constantly wear through the one side of the plates and wear out one side before the other side. They wear out more evenly, extending the life of the salt cell. So that's a really important thing with your system to do. The first component of the control box that I want to talk about is the display. This display shows you the average salt reading of the water in your pool as its default. So here you can see the system has 3,100 parts per million of chlorine in the water. If you ever have the display show like 3.10, it's a setting issue that has been changed to where it's now displaying parts per billion. There's nothing wrong with your system. It's just showing a different measurement rather than the parts per million measurement. Now, the ideal range for your salt system to generate chlorine is between 2,700 and 3,700 parts per million, with 3,200 being the ideal. If you go above or below those numbers, the salt system will shut down. You'll get some error lights on there that will no longer allow it to generate chlorine. So example, if you had 2,600 on the display or 3,800 on the display, you either have not enough salt or too much salt for the system to work. And I'll go over how to tell that when we get to the indicator lights in the next part of this. So the main thing to remember about this system is if the chlorine level in your pool is too low, say you take your test strips or your drops and you measure the chlorine and the chlorine's not enough, the pouring more salt into the pool will not solve the problem. So if it's reading 2,600, then you need to add salt. But if it's reading 3,200 and you don't have enough chlorine, pouring more salt in is not going to make more chlorine. It's just going to add more salt to the pool and eventually over salt the pool to where you can't generate chlorine. So that's an important thing to remember. The next part that we're going to talk about are the lights. These are the indicator lights that are shown by the arrow there. The first light on the top is the power light. That should always be on if there's power to the system. So if the power goes out, of course, the power light's not going to be on. Or if you go over and you shut the breaker off to the system, the power light will turn off. But the power light should always be on as long as there is electricity going to the system. If there's not, then you might want to call your pool professional because there is something obviously not right about the system and it might need a repair. The next light is the generating light. This is the same as the power light. This shows that the system is on and working and should always be illuminated. If both of these lights are off, there's something wrong and you should call your pool professional. The next light is the superchlorinate light. Now this indicates that the system is now in superchlorinate, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. The superchlorinate is generating extra chlorine, and it means you've turned it to superchlorinate. The next part is not necessarily used by our company, Pressure Use Pools and Spas. It's remotely controlled. That indicates that it's not being controlled by the salt box anymore. Something else is telling the salt system how to work. So if you see that, then it means you probably have some sort of other controller or system that is telling the salt system how to work. The next light after that is the no flow light. This is exactly like it says. It indicates there's not enough flow going through the salt cell of water for the system to generate chlorine. So if that light's ever on, it could be as simple as you have a dirty filter and it needs cleaned or backwashed and rinsed. If you're a sand filter, that may simply solve that problem. If that does not solve the problem, then you might want to talk to your pool professional, give them a call. Indicates that there's an issue with the system and something might need repaired. The next light is the check salt light. This light will come on usually in conjunction with the inspect cell light, which is the final light, and we'll talk about that in just a second. They typically will come on to indicate that the system does not have enough chlorine. So if you ever open up the box and you see the inspect cell and the check salt light blinking and the display says 2600 or 2400, obviously there's not enough salt in the pool, so we need to get some salt in the water. Now the next light after that is the high salt light. Exactly like it says, it means there's too much salt, system can't generate chlorine. The only way to solve the high salt light problem is you would have to drain water out of your pool and refill it with fresh clean water that is not salt. The last light is the inspect cell light. We talked about that and coming on in conjunction with the check salt light. The inspect cell light is also like the change oil light in your car. It comes on after 500 hours of operation, so the system's been generating chlorine for 500 hours, and that tells you that it's time to take the cell off and take a look at it and get it clean. Well, if you clean your salt cell, if you follow the tricks on the first slide, you can usually just reset this light, and that's as simple as holding down the diagnostic button for 3 seconds. That'll reset the light, reset the 500-hour timer. Not a big problem anymore. The next button is the diagnostic button, which is what we just talked about with resetting the light. The diagnostic button is mostly going to be used by your pool professional. That is to get into different readings that the system has, so you can see like the amperage and the watts and the percentage and the software revision and so on and so forth by pressing that diagnostic light. The quick start guide that we gave you for the salt system in the email that went along with this video will explain what all those are and what they are, but for you, the homeowner, you're usually not going to play around with that too much. That's mostly for the pool professional. The next part of this is the desired output. This is the dial that's down below the display that's indicated by the white arrow. That is how you control how much chlorine you're putting into your water. So if you ever go out to your pool and the salt system's reading 32 and you've measured you did your test strips or your drops and it says there's not enough chlorine in the water, that's as simple as walking over to this dial and turning the dial up. If you have too much chlorine, then obviously you're going to turn the dial down. I recommend not turning it more than 20% at any given time. And if you ever turn it up and the system does not generate more chlorine, then it could be another issue that you're having. I would bring a sample of your water to a pool professional, have them test it. It could be an indicator of something else wrong with the pool. So that's those two components. The last component that we're going to talk about is the switch that's indicated by the arrow there. This has 3 positions: off, auto, or superchlorinate. The default position that you're going to have with your pool running and in the pool season is you'll be in auto. The off one is usually when the pool is shut down or if you've been instructed by your pool professional to shut it off. And the last one is superchlorinate. Now, if you've ever had a chlorine pool before, you know that about once a week you had to go out and shock your pool, and you did this by grabbing a bucket of powdered chlorine shock and you would throw that out into the pool, and this spikes the chlorine level to help get rid of the chloramines in the pool, get the water nice and fresh and healthy and running again. Now, the cool thing about the salt system is you don't have to get that big bucket and deal with physical chlorine and the smell. You're just going to simply walk over, flip the switch to superchlorinate. This will put the pool into superchlorinate for 24 hours. So this is something that you want to do on a weekly basis when the season's really hot and running, on a towards the tail end of the season or the beginning of the season when the weather's cool, you may only have to do this once every 2 weeks. So just keep an eye on the water levels and how much the pool is getting used. Once that we get into the heavy use of the season, you want to super chlorinate once a week. I recommend picking an evening that everybody's done. Most people will do it like a Sunday night because nobody's going to be in the pool first thing Monday morning, so we can spike that chlorine level. We don't have to worry about anybody getting into the water. Again, chlorine's not going to hurt anybody, so if you super chlorinate the pool, you can do that. I actually even recommend if you're going to have a big party and there's going to be a lot of people getting into the pool and out of the pool and a lot of things going on, kids jumping in and out, go ahead before the party starts and go over and flip your super chlorinate on, and that will help compensate for the extra use of the pool. So that's a good trick there. Also, if the superchlorinate, like if you flip the switch on the superchlorinate and you forget to turn it off, it's not a big deal. The system will only superchlorinate for 24 hours. Whether you flip that switch off or not, the system reverts back to auto. Now the switch isn't going to move, but the system will automatically go back to auto after 24 hours. So it's not a big deal if you forget to switch it. Just the next time you go to flip the switch, you'll have to physically switch it back to auto and then back to superchlorinate to get your superchlorinate again. So this about encompasses everything you need to know about your Hayward Aquarite salt system. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to call your pool professional, or if you're local with us and dealing with us, you can email water@prestigepoolsandspas.com. We'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have about your salt system and how to use it. Thanks for watching.